In this video, we're going to walk and talk you through some top tutor tips to help you pass your Advanced Audit and Assurance ACCA exam, which I'm sure you're looking forward to. Well, I have a fantastic guest who's come on the channel today. Pen and paper at the ready, everyone. Erin, feel free to introduce yourself and why the student should listen to you when they've got their AAA exam to look forward to.
Oh, yeah, indeed. Definitely looking forward to AAA. My name's Erin Morton, and I have been teaching ACCA for, well, 21 years now, and specialise with the audit subjects. And I am also one of the ACCA expert tutors. So I have worked quite a bit with them, with student support, but also tutor support as well globally.
Mega, honestly, guys, we're in the right place. I've put Erin's details in the description of this video. If you want to get in touch, LinkedIn, drop her a message, but we're going to get straight into it. Kick us off, Erin. The student's got the AAA exam. What's your first top tip? How are they going to get that 50 plus?
Think, well, 50 plus, you need to be looking at strategy and how you're going to approach the exam, but also your preparation for the exam as well. Time, as we know, is quite a precious commodity when it comes to ACCA exams. So making sure that you have got enough time to prepare properly for this exam, and give it as much attention as you possibly can in the build-up.
Nice on there. And linking into mistakes, what are the sort of things that students who maybe have failed this exam, they're watching this video, how can we help them as well with those sort of tips, linking it in?
I think, well, I think what lots of students fail to do is look at the syllabus as a whole. There's always going to be that, what can I just about get away with in order to get through this exam? And there's lots of areas that get missed but still come up, and therefore you're missing out on vital marks, which, as we've said, we're literally just trying to tip you over to that 50% if possible. So making sure that you are learning the whole syllabus and giving yourself time to do that.
Yeah.
And I always break up the learning into two big sections. There is the knowledge phase. So you do need to make sure that you know your stuff and looking at the whole area. So don't just start looking at audit risk and planning because you know it's going to come up in section A, but make sure that you are looking at everything, the smaller areas like the role of an audit committee, money laundering, fraud, all of these things will come up quite regularly in the exam. So definitely making sure that you are preparing for every little bit. But then not just doing that, giving yourself sufficient time for revision, for exam question practice, and making sure that you are really targeting those exam questions so that you have your exam day strategy as well.
Oh,
And I think,
exactly.
that's one of the biggest problems that we've had with students in the past is unfortunately not setting your learning out in that way.
It's all flooding back to me now, and I admit on the channel that I failed Advanced Audit Assurance. It wasn't even a close fail, 48, 49. It was a horrendous fail. I think in the 30s. I don't even want to think about it. But we've got to think about the CBE platform, professional skills. What are the other areas that you help and sort of nurture your ACCA students to get them to pass?
Yeah, you just touched in on the presentation mark. So it's about knowing what the examiner's expecting you to do in preparation for your exam. So we've got 100 marks in our exam. However, 20 of those marks are presentation marks. How do you get those? Because they're quite a big chunk in relation to the exam itself. And, straight from the examining team's mouth, they have said that you should be preparing your exam as if you were going for 80 marks. So you are looking at 2.4 minutes per mark across both sections. And then if you prepare your answers correctly, those presentation marks will flow through. So it's about making sure you're spending that little bit longer to try and target those marks and using the information that they've given you. So section A, for example, huge amount of information, all of the exhibits that you get given in section A to help build the picture of the company that you're looking at. And what you need to do is make sure that you are reading that information and trying to get as much as you can out of that and making notes as you go. But also you need to be able to plan and make sure that you're putting your answers into your area, planning out the structure so that then you've got some time to then, make sure that you enhance those and write full answers for each of those marks. So there's making sure that you understand what the examiner wants, definitely. And time management will then get a bit easier if you know that that's how much time you should be spending on each mark.
Yeah, and again, it's the Saturdays, the Sundays where I used to sit in the library and do those mock papers that you don't want to do, and how important just so it comes across in the recording, because I can say it's imperative, but you're a top tutor in this area. If a student say does one mock, or maybe they do 3 or 4, can you see the difference, or how important are those mocks, and maybe when should a student be doing them?
You don't practice exam questions, you're not going to pass. It's literally as simple as that. Particularly now, you know, you're in a professional exam situation, and it's not about knowledge. It's about, do you understand what the examiner wants? Do you know how to present your information correctly? And do you know your stuff? And it's the combination of all of those skills that's then going to help you pass this exam. And unfortunately, you don't just rock up on exam day
Mm,
and be able to present information in the way that they are expecting to see it. You've got to learn that. And so, yeah, it is a case of making sure that you look at in detail exam questions. Don't skim through lots and lots of them. I've always said quality over quantity, really, making sure that you've looked at each question. You've understood what the examiner was looking at. You can read the examiner's reports so you can get feedback on what their intention was, how they felt students attempted those particular questions. So you can get that background information based on that question. You've got the model answer, which gives you more further reading as well. And ideally trying to be disciplined when you're question practicing. So timing your answers, giving, you know, even if you break it down at first, so, you know, give yourself a bit of time to plan the answer and then maybe stop, have a breather, and then write it out in full. And over time, your confidence is going to grow, and then you'll be able to do these questions and be able to get more down in the time that you've got required.
yeah, oh, really good advice there. And it's all flooding back where when I failed it the first time and reviewed some of my mock answers, I thought, surely I've done enough to pass. Then I read how I prepared and I went, James, this just isn't good enough. If there's one thing to take away from this video, apart from all of Erin's mega tips, is the level of detail and the specific answers that you have to give, applying back to the scenario and the key
Yeah.
terms in the requirement. I cannot stress enough. I know you just go, oh, surely, James, surely it doesn't have to be.
Feels like a minefield, doesn't it? It
Yeah.
really feels so, you know, you've got to think about the verbs in the requirement. You've got to look at the specific terminology in the information that they've given. And it's quite overwhelming, but actually, just like everything, if you prepare and practice and over time develop those skills, everything just becomes much more easier.
Mm.
So it is about, you know, giving yourself enough justice to actually have a go at this exam.
Oh, indeed. Well, we're going to have to get onto the elephant in the room now on this as well, because students will have seen this online in their research about the AAA exam, the pass rate, Erin. Talk
Uh,
us through it. What we saying?
it's pretty sad, isn't it? Unfortunately, I mean, it often hits the bottom of the pile, or it's there or thereabouts. And you know, it's an optional exam, but it's a very popular exam. So there are
Mm,
lots of students preparing for the AAA exam, and it is, you know, if students aren't doing well and haven't got what they wanted from AAA, it's normally down to really trying to understand and target those points in the exam itself, giving yourself time management in order to develop it properly, overrunning as well. So, you know, spending too long on one particular area and running out of time and really not attempting the whole exam, which, you know, AAA can send you into a rabbit hole. It does happen, particularly section A, where there's so much to absorb. You can easily run out of time.
yeah.
And then you're not giving sufficient energy to section B.
Mm,
So, you know, try something different. Do section B first, or answer one of the questions from section B and then go back to section A. There's no rule that says that you have to do anything in a particular order. So you can give yourself sufficient energy on something you think you'll be able to get through a little bit more calmly, and then leave the monster until the end, and then you can attack it and do what you can in the time you've got.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
really good.
it's a tough one. It is a tough exam, and being aware that it's tough and it needs sufficient preparation, I think is one of the biggest lessons.
Yeah, that pass rate hovering around about 30-ish%, 32, it's around there. Not to be put off, but I mean, I was a student sitting it who I never worked in audit as well. And it was only until like little things that could help someone who's maybe not working in audit. You've got to know the audit process from start to finish in utter detail. I cannot express the level of detail on there. And then you've got to have a picture in your mind, even though you've never been on an audit, like what is happening at that situation, the seniority of the people who are involved. And then we get onto sort of other buzzwords on there like familiarity threat. And then we're getting into
Yeah.
areas like audit risk. I mean, how do you help, like what advice would you give to students with balancing the syllabus or dealing with the mammoth task?
Two things to be aware of. It's not an extension of audit and assurance at the applied skills stage. You need to treat it as its own entity. So you may have done that before, or you may have had exemptions, in which case you've studied audit in a different way with something else beforehand. So you need to treat this as a whole syllabus and starting from scratch, because even if you have seen a lot of these things before, there are just some more details. There's some different elements that you won't have seen in those topics. So you need to know them in a little bit more detail. So, if you've seen ethics before, great. Now make sure you're happy with the ethics that's in the AAA exam as well. The other thing is that you touched on the fact that you're looking at the volume of information relating to audit and auditing standards and all of that element. But there is the accounting side here as well. Remember, in the simplest of terms, we are auditing a set of financial statements and we are reviewing company records. And so you need to make sure that you are totally on top of all of the key accounting principles, which all come from SBR. And so another big thing to make sure that you are happy with, again, it comes from us tutors, it comes from the examining team, is that, ideally do SBR first. I could not recommend, one of my biggest things is make sure you have completed or currently studying SBR before you do AAA.
Yeah, I can't advocate for that anymore because it's so imperative. It's the sort of steps, the stepping stones
Yeah,
on there, isn't
it
it?
just
That
makes it too big. Makes it too big. If you're trying to get your head around the accounting standards and thinking about group accounts and all of those other tricky areas that you may not have looked in depth before, if you've got that to think about on top of AAA, it's going to be a massive headache.
yeah, and we briefly touched on it at the start, but if you are struggling on, say, audit risk or business risk, what are your thoughts on the technical articles? Like, do students, we already know the answer to this, but do they use the articles enough, Erin?
Those that prepare thoroughly probably do, but there is a huge chunk of the ACCA community, student community, that don't use the articles enough and don't kind of read around the subject and make sure that you are, aware of current issues, thinking about what's going on in the real world, and looking at those articles. And they release them. When there's new topics coming up, there's new things that are released onto the ACCA website. And, if that's the examining team preparing an article, I think it's really important that we listen to them and go, oh, look, they've given me a vital piece of information. So let me read it to see if it will help me in my next exam.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe you've got a student who's failed, who's watching this. The examiner's report takes you through some absolute golden techniques of where students have made mistakes on there. But this is just to highlight so many things that, again, Erin's got loads of great resources. Get in touch with her on there. But Erin, our last final point, what have you got to get on record that could help a student get that pass? What's that final tip that you have in mind that could make the difference?
Get support. So you know, just it's quite lonely, this ACCA journey. And for those of you doing AAA, you're normally towards the end or at the very end stage of this process, and making sure that you're getting some feedback, maybe on the way that you're structuring your answers, that you can make life easier for you by getting resources that help you break down topics easier. So getting and obtaining as many resources as you can and getting the help, which there is no shame in getting, quite frankly,
No.
just to get you over that line. That would be, yeah, it's a tough one to get through. So it definitely needs a whole range of different things to help you.
Oh, yeah, tell me about it. Again, you're just making me flood back when I had to go into the office and tell people I'd failed on it. And
Oh,
but
it's a
especially,
shame.
I know, I
There's
know.
no shame though, is there? They're hard. They're designed to be challenging.
Yeah, yeah, but it could be the difference, like this video, in just getting someone over the line, qualified. It could be the last one. But as I said, guys, I put all of Erin's details down below. Make sure, of course, you subscribe and like this video to help more students out. And then finally, of course, if you have any questions for Erin and myself, put a comment down there. We'd love to hear how you get on in the exam, any questions you're finding. But Erin, I've got to say, just thank you so much for your
You're
insights
welcome.
today. It could be the difference in helping a student get that pass.
Let's hope so.
That's all right, guys. Well, we'll see you in the next video soon. Make sure you subscribe. And thank you so much again, Erin. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.